Hi, my name is Dina, and I'm going to share my experience in El Salvador. I feel so blessed that I got to visit and learn about my family's country. What surprised me the most is that how much El Salvadorians like to sing, and also how much the U.S. was involved in El Salvadorians' hardships. For example, the U.S. sent $1 million a day during the Civil War. Now, the government of El Salvador is in control of the country. But that's not necessarily a good thing because poor people are getting mistakenly arrested because the government thinks they're in gangs. Someone who impacted me in El Salvador is Vicky from IPM. She's one of the directors. And she was the person we spent the most time with, and she made sure we had fun and learned.
Hi, I'm here to talk about my experience in El Salvador with Dumbarton United Methodist Church this past summer. My two highlights were probably when we went to El Zaite, which is a small town that before the state of inception, which is the current government policy, they dealt with a lot of gang violence, and it was very, very unsafe place to live, and a lot of the people there are still being targeted by the government under the new state of exception because of that history of gang violence. And so there are a lot of young people being targeted there. We visited a organization that hosts preschool and after-school programs as well as teen programs. And the reason this was a highlight for me was because we got to see important community building organizations that had programs that were run by youth, which I thought was really incredible. There were 16, 18-year-olds who were running a radio show to talk about taboo topics that were affecting their community, such as teen pregnancy, pregnancy prevention, just things that they saw happening that no one wanted to do anything about because it was taboo, and they're like, well, we're going to do something about it, which I thought was really inspiring. And then my other highlight is when we spoke to Candelaria, who is a woman who worked very closely with the 4 American missionaries who were killed by the government, by the El Salvador government, for their close work with Oscar Romero, as well as just their commitment to Romero's teachings and helping the poor people in El Salvador. And they lost their lives because of it. And she told us their story and told us her story, and then she sang us some music that she had written, songs she had written about what El Salvador has been through and what she has been through. And it really was such a beautiful experience and such a unique history to learn about, even though it was quite a difficult history because we had to reckon with the fact that, through all of El Salvador's struggles, the U.S. was a constant, and more often than not a negative constant, which was kind of hard to reckon with. And Candelaria brought that out and pointed that out and said, if I didn't meet you all, I would probably hate you because you are American and because of what the Americans have done to El Salvador, which that was very, very unique perspective, and I think we were incredibly lucky to be able to hear that.
Hi, my name is Evan, and I would like to share a little bit about my experience in El Salvador this summer. One of the places where I saw God in El Salvador was at the University of Central America, where 6 Jesuit priests and 2 women were martyred. We toured the university, the chapel, and the museum. The art in the chapel was really powerful because it showed how people were tortured during the Civil War and the violence against and repression of poor people, and those Christians who were standing with the poor during the war. There was also an altar for some students who had been arrested or had disappeared in the last few years. And that was really important because it showed me that there was still a lot of repression going on. I felt God because I knew God was watching over all of them and that God had told them to do what was right. One thing that surprised me was how serious poverty was in the countryside. I knew it was a developing country, but I didn't expect that there would be so much inequality or that the government would not take care of people or even, in some cases, would attack poor people. I'm so glad I got to go on this trip, and I even switched from French to Spanish this school year, so I can hopefully go back someday and be able to speak with people and understand more about their lives.